Who the fuck is Andy Danzinger? By Humongous. Quote, life is short and truth works far and lives long. Let us speak the truth. Unquote. Arthur Schopenhauer. You sense you're part of something larger, but feel prevented from understanding what that is. There has to be more to my existence than wasting away in this cubicle, calling and harassing people so I can accumulate these useless pieces of paper called cash. Why won't bill collectors leave me alone? Don't they care I'm perpetually one paycheck from homelessness? All I want to do is explore, invent, and travel, but all I ever do is work. Of course you're part of something more prodigious. Just look at the night sky. That's what we could be comprehending. But instead we struggle to keep a soul-crushing oligarchy, which we ourselves perpetuate, from executing us. When it comes to that monumental scenario you perceive you're a component of, here's a clue. Politicians and military officials are opening up about the UFO topic. Why wouldn't they? The system they support is more illogical than using battery acid as lube during a masturbation session. Hence, numerous folks in positions of quote-unquote power are asserting we're being visited by otherworldly entities. Most of these bureaucrats don't comprehend this entire system is, and always has been, rotten to its roots. But at least they're finally discussing something of relevance. Take, for instance, Mike Gravel, former senator from Alaska and outspoken advocate of further UFO investigation. Gravel was on the board of the 2013 citizen hearing on disclosure, attempting to determine if there was validity to the unidentified flying object conundrum. It was here Mike concluded for himself, UFOs of otherworldly design have been visiting Earth for quite some time. According to Gravel, quote, there probably are 1,000 sightings a month worldwide, but the United States government has been the most recalcitrant in recognizing this, officially. Now the White House says, oh, we know nothing about this. There's no files on this subject. And that's really an outright lie and crap, because we receive testimony from military people over and over again, indicating there certainly was something there. There is an extraterrestrial presence monitoring our planet, and monitoring it extensively. I think that they are monitoring us from these unidentified objects, flying objects. Now, keep in mind, these people, or whoever they are far superior to us. They have at least traveled 37,000 light years, and so they have a system of propulsion, a system of energy, that our scientists can't fully comprehend. Unquote. Eventually, old Mike gets pretty close to concluding what history has proven time and again. As long as there's government, it's impossible for the populace to be free. Quote, right now, in our development, we are run by the military and the power elites who do not want to change the present structure of energy distribution on the planet. The solution is not the government. That's where the problem exists. The solution is with the people, and the people need to be able to become lawmakers. All they do right now is give their power away on election day. Unquote. So, Gravel comes clean, but is he the only government representative who's spoken adamantly on the subject? Not even close. See my other publications for a slew of officials who've blown the whistle on the biggest revelation in our species' history. Such stated, I'll provide a few more salient examples, proving this is a topic taken extremely seriously in the bureaucracy. How about Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of National Defense, who has the following to proclaim. Quote, I am sure that there are aliens that are aware of what I'm doing, probably more than one species, because they communicate by mental telepathy, and consequently they can read your mind. And you can't hide what you're thinking even. So they would know exactly what everyone's doing, thinking, and I'm sure I'm no exception. Unquote. Not something you'll hear from El Presidente as he pumps you full of lies. Holy fuck! The government might shut down? What are we going to do? How about rejoice in our immediate freedom? Hellier explains, quote, "My interest in UFOs was not very great until 8 years ago. When I was Minister of Defense, of course I got sightings reports, but I was too busy unifying the Canadian Armed Forces to be able to worry about them. There's no question the U.S. government took this whole idea of advanced technology very seriously and started back engineering and spending a lot of money on it soon after the crashes at Roswell in 1947. The security rating in regard to UFOs was higher than for the H-bomb, and still is. That's the way it works. There had been lots of otherworldly visits to Earth, probably going back thousands of years. But the level of activity took on a new dimension after the first atomic bomb was set off in New Mexico in 1945, and all of a sudden the number of sightings increased. And my thesis is that because they know something we don't know, and that is every atomic bomb that is put off on Earth has an effect on other parts of the cosmos, they were concerned about it, and I use the idea that the children are playing with matches. They're afraid that we're going to blow up our planet, so that it would be uninhabitable both for ourselves and for visits from them, and they didn't like that idea. So they came down in larger numbers." Unquote. Whoa! Didn't catch that one during any stupid senatorial debate. Then again, these are only two examples of prominent figures in this fucked up freak show who've spoken out. How about Brigadier General Stephen Lovekin, formerly stationed at the Pentagon, who had this to say in regard to UFO interactions with superior military officers? Quote, "It seemed giant-like when I saw it because it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this before, and all eyes were just peeled on that particular thing. And when he told us what it was eerie there. You could have heard a pin drop in the room when it was first mentioned. He said it had been taken from one of the UFO craft that had crashed in New Mexico. I was told that what they had there for us to deal with came from the New Mexico site, but there were other sites, and there were other crashes. They didn't say where, they were not pinpointed, but it was made quite clear that that was not the only site that they had gathered information from, and also materiel." Unquote. When it comes to UFOs, Lovekin's testimony covers a plethora of topics. For instance, quote, "In this country, during the early 50s, numerous bases were built that would allow the President and Congress and VIPs to go in case of attack, and Mount Weather, Virginia was one of those. There was equipment up there, and it was specifically told to me when I first came there was equipment up there to deal specifically with the UFO problem. UFOs had been sighted around Mount Weather not only on one or two occasions, but on numerous occasions. Stories about radar lock-on to UFOs? Yes, there were. And several of those stories came out of Ohio, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. But several others came from California, Texas, Washington. From what I can recall, but I would say that there were probably between 200 and 300 cases of lock-on. Did I ever hear that we had picked up signals which could not be identified? Or if they could be identified, were they coming in from strange craft that perhaps had given us or put us under surveillance? And yes, I did hear that. In fact, several of the reports had come in through pilots' radios. So whatever intelligence we were dealing with at that time knew how to deal with us. They knew how to communicate with us. But that they were of extraterrestrial origin, that was the belief." Unquote. Let's just pretend none of this is happening and go back to Rachel Maddow performing analingus on rabid raccoons. Again, take a page out of Howard Beale's book and, quote, "turn off your television sets," unquote. You're part of something immense, something universal you could be exploring. But instead you settle for the insipid banality of Grey's Anatomy, Justin Bieber's shriveled sack, and a myriad of assholes you hated in high school, but now watch nightly in 2 dimensions on a screen in your living room. So who the fuck is Andy Danzinger? Andy Danzinger is the man who said this: Quote, "We were flying from Kansas City to Waterloo, Iowa. I was just a first officer in a commuter airline turboprop. I noticed off to my right, and I was sitting in the right seat, was a white disc, just kind of thin, barely visible behind the clouds. It was pacing us. After about 40 minutes, we started our descent into Waterloo. And as we started our descent and looked up, here's this giant red ball just above the clouds." Unquote. Papa A was Barry Obama's pilot during said politician's 2008 campaign to become biggest asshole on the planet. Danzinger was also the man who asserted the following when asked why aviators, many of whom see peculiar aerial enigma, often don't report them. Quote, "You don't want to be brandished as being crazy. That was one of our concerns before we actually reported it to air traffic control. We discussed it amongst each other. Is this something that's going to jeopardize our career? The government discounts every single report that ever seems to come out. The news media tends to, or at least in the past has tended to, ridicule every UFO report." Unquote. In fact, Danzinger didn't disclose his aforementioned encounter in 1989 until decades later. Quote, "I've got a few friends who've called me and said, 'Wow, maybe this is going to finally get this stuff out. I've seen stuff, and it's about time that somebody came forward. You're actually getting some press, and maybe people will start believing this a little bit more.'" Unquote. So, you hold no credence in the existence of UFOs of otherworldly nature because you yourself have never seen them. Such stated, you do believe in quote-unquote India, quote-unquote Russia, the quote-unquote United States, or any other quote-unquote country, even though you've never seen the make-believe borders around these alleged territories, never seen them because they don't exist. As a result, you have to ask yourself, is this rational thinking? Or have I been brainwashed into believing in things that aren't there and thus aren't real?